Tony Jaa's story began in a small rural village in Surin, Thailand. Born on February 5, 1976, his early life was shaped by poverty, simplicity, and a love for martial arts. He wasn't born into fame or fortune, but into a world where hard work was the only way forward. As a child, he spent his days helping his family with farm work. They lived in a modest home without much luxury, but Tony carried a dream bigger than his surroundings. He watched martial arts movies on small screens and was fascinated by the incredible skills of Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li. Tony didn't just watch them, he studied their every move. In the rice fields near his home, he would practice flips, jumps, and kicks, sometimes hurting himself in the process. But he didn't stop, because he wanted to master the art of movement and discipline. His family saw his obsession, but they never discouraged him. They couldn't offer him money or professional training, yet they gave him support in the only way they knew, through encouragement and belief. That belief became the fuel for Tony's determination. By his teenage years, Tony was skilled enough to impress people in his community. His speed, flexibility, and creativity were far beyond ordinary. He wasn't just copying what he saw in movies, he was creating his own style by combining raw passion with discipline. Eventually, Tony's talent caught the attention of Punna Ridikrai, a legendary action choreographer in Thailand. Punna became his mentor, and this changed everything. With Punna's guidance, Tony entered the world of professional stunt work, where he performed dangerous acts for other actors in films. Those early years as a stuntman were difficult. He worked behind the scenes, performing flips through fire, dangerous leaps, and painful falls, all without recognition. He was earning very little money, often risking his life just to stay in the industry. Still, he never complained, because he believed his big break would come. That break arrived with the film Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior in 2003. Tony's performance shocked the world. He performed real stunts without wires, CGI, or doubles. Audiences could not believe what they were watching. A new martial arts hero was born, and Tony Jaa became a global sensation overnight. The success of Ong-Bak gave Tony an international platform. Suddenly, Hollywood studios were noticing him, and fans across Asia were calling him the next Bruce Lee. He went from a farm boy in Surin to a superstar, and the change was overwhelming. Despite the fame, Tony remained humble. He credited his mentor Punna for everything and often spoke about his family's sacrifices. But behind the smiles and action-packed performances, his life was already beginning to carry the weight of pressures he never expected. The film industry in Thailand was not easy to navigate. Contracts, business politics, and money disputes started surrounding him. As someone who grew up with little exposure to business or fame, Tony found himself caught in situations he didn't fully understand. He wanted to focus on art and action, but the industry demanded negotiations and compromises. Even while his fame was exploding, Tony was facing exhaustion. Performing his own stunts took a toll on his body. Years of practicing dangerous moves caused injuries that he often kept hidden. He didn't want to show weakness, but his body was silently suffering. Another challenge was the pressure of comparisons. Everywhere he went, people compared him to Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan. While this was flattering, it was also a heavy burden. He didn't want to just be a copy of someone else. He wanted to be remembered for his own unique style. In the middle of all this, his personal life was also changing. Fame meant less privacy and less time with his family. The boy who once found peace in the rice fields was now trapped in a schedule filled with filming, promotions, and endless responsibilities. The simplicity of his childhood seemed far away. By the late 2000s, Tony was at the peak of his career, but cracks were beginning to show. Rumors started spreading about disagreements with producers and difficulties on film sets. Some said he walked away from projects suddenly, others claimed he became distant. What few knew was that Tony was struggling with pressures he didn't know how to manage. One of the turning points came when Tony decided to step away from movies altogether and become a Buddhist monk. This shocked his fans and the industry. For someone at the height of his fame, leaving everything behind felt unthinkable. But for Tony, it was a way to escape the chaos and find peace again. His time as a monk was not just a spiritual break, it was a desperate attempt to heal his mind. He had achieved the dream he once chased as a child, but it came with pain, betrayal, and exhaustion. For the first time, people began to see that Tony Jaa's life was not as perfect as it looked on screen. When he returned to films later, things were not the same. The industry had changed, his fame had shifted, and the opportunities were fewer. He still had the talent, but the tragic turn in his career had already begun to unfold. Fans who once saw him as unstoppable were now witnessing his struggles. What makes Tony's story heartbreaking is not just the injuries or the fame struggles, but the human side of it. A man who gave his body and soul to entertain the world was slowly breaking inside. He wanted to be strong, but life was teaching him painful lessons about fame, trust, and survival. Tony Jaa's return to the film industry after his time as a monk was filled with both hope and disappointment. His fans were eager to see him back in action, but the truth was, he was not the same person anymore. The spiritual journey gave him peace, but it also created distance from the industry he once dominated. He tried to rebuild his career through films like Ong-Bak 2 and Ong-Bak 3, but behind the scenes, things were complicated. There were constant issues with budgets, disagreements with producers, and even unfinished projects. Instead of enjoying success, Tony was drowning in stress. His mentor, Punna Ridikrai, who had been like a father figure to him, was also facing challenges. The bond between Tony and Punna remained strong, but the weight of the film industry was heavy on both of them. Punna tried to protect Tony, but even he couldn't shield him from the ruthless side of fame. Then came one of the hardest blows. Tony began losing international momentum. While actors like Jackie Chan and Jet Li were becoming global household names, Tony's career slowed down. The delay in projects and the constant behind-the-scenes chaos meant the world wasn't seeing enough of him. Physically, Tony was also facing more injuries. Years of pushing his body beyond its limits had left lasting damage. Broken bones, sprains, and constant pain became part of his reality. The same stunts that made him famous were now making life harder for him. Every jump and kick carried the weight of risk. Emotionally, Tony felt trapped between two worlds. On one side, he had fans demanding more action, more stunts, and more daring moves. On the other, he had his personal desire for peace and balance. He could not keep everyone happy, and this left him torn inside. The tragic turn in his life became more visible when he struggled financially despite his fame. Stories surfaced about him being tied to restrictive contracts that did not give him the financial rewards he deserved. For someone who risked his life for every scene, the reality was heartbreaking. In 2014, his mentor Punna Ridikrai passed away. This was a devastating loss for Tony. The man who discovered him, trained him, and stood by him was gone. Tony was left without the guiding hand that had shaped his entire career. Fans noticed that his spirit seemed different after that. He did appear in international films like Furious 7, which introduced him to a wider Hollywood audience. But his role was small, and many felt he deserved much more. For someone of his talent, being sidelined in minor roles felt unfair. It was a reminder of how unpredictable fame can be. Tony continued acting in Thai and international films, but the magic of his early years never fully returned. The industry moved forward, younger stars emerged, and Tony was left fighting to hold his place. What made it tragic was that his fall wasn't due to lack of talent, but due to circumstances and struggles beyond his control. Yet, despite all these difficulties, Tony never turned bitter. He continued to speak about respect, humility, and discipline.